The unemployment rate right now looks fine, and that's exactly the problem. In 1 month, America's labor force shrank. The total force shrank by 720,000 people. And participation rate, it hit its lowest level in 50 years outside of COVID. Those people, they didn't get fired. They walked. And no official rate counts someone who stopped raising their hand. So which side of that line is your household on? Check this out and let's see if we can figure this out together.
Picture a booth in a diner just off the interstate. 2 coffees, 2 plates, nothing fancy. The waffle arrives hot at the edges and cold in the middle because it did not come off a griddle. It came out of a package through a microwave. Then the check lands, $38 for 2 people. 10 years ago, this same breakfast in this same booth was about $16. And here's the part nobody tells you at the table. The person who actually owns this restaurant has never set foot in the state. He may have never seen a plate of its food. If you have felt that sting lately, the sense that eating out got worse and more expensive at the same time, you are not imagining it. It is not one bad location or one lazy cook. It has a name, it has a playbook, and it has a paper trail. And by the end of this, you will know all 3. Start with the bodies, because the last 2 years have been the worst stretch of casual dining bankruptcies ever recorded. Red Lobster, TGI Fridays, Hooters, On the Border, Rubio's, every one of them filed for Chapter 11. The court process where a company admits it cannot pay its debts. TGI Fridays went from about 600 restaurants at its peak to fewer than 100. And what is left is now purely franchised. On the Border got so hollowed out that a buyer rescued it from bankruptcy and then shut every company location down within a year. Denny's is closing around 150 restaurants, roughly 1 in 10 it runs. This is not a recession story. Recessions hit everybody. This hit specific chains, owned in a specific way, and the decisions that killed them were made in boardrooms, not dining rooms. So let's follow the money in 3 pieces. The first piece is who actually owns American restaurants now. And the map is stranger than you think. Take one firm, Rourke Capital, based in Atlanta, managing about $37 billion. You have almost certainly never heard of it. But through holding companies it controls, Rourke owns Subway, Dunkin', Arby's, Buffalo Wild Wings, Sonic, Jimmy John's, Baskin-Robbins, Carl's Jr., and Hardee's, Cinnabon, Auntie Anne's, and a stake in Culver's, more than 25 chains. It bought Dunkin' for $11.3 billion and Subway for as much as $9.6 billion. And it bought them the way these deals always work, with borrowed money. Here's the number that should stop you. Rourke's restaurants did about $52 billion in sales in a recent year. McDonald's did about 53. One firm nearly the size of McDonald's, and its name is nowhere on any door. IHOP and Applebee's are run by a different company, Dine Brands, that owns almost no kitchens at all and mostly collects franchise royalties. And a single private equity outfit called Tri-Artisan owned both TGI Fridays and Hooters. Both went bankrupt. Hooters filed owing about $376 million, and its founders had to buy it back out of bankruptcy. Private equity, if the term is fuzzy, means investment firms that buy companies mostly with borrowed money, planning to pull cash out and sell in a few years. And here is the catch that does the damage. When a firm buys a chain on debt, the chain itself, not the firm, carries that debt. Every dollar of interest is a dollar that cannot go to the kitchen. The restaurant's job quietly becomes paying off the loan used to buy it. That inversion is the engine under everything that follows. The second piece is what happened to the food. Your breakfast at a lot of these places is not cooked, it is assembled. The industry even has a term for it, and they are not shy. They call it speed scratch. It means starting from pre-made components, prepped sauces, and pre-cooked proteins. And most of it moves through a tiny number of enormous distributors. One company, Cisco, is about 18% of a $377 billion distribution market. And just 3 of these suppliers move roughly half of everything American restaurants serve. Now listen to how the industry sells speed scratch in its own words. One distributor lists the benefit plainly: fewer back-of-house workers needed. Another pitches it as a way to expand your menu without expanding your staff. Cisco itself markets it as a way to offer diners upgraded dishes at higher price points while taking pressure off kitchen staff. Read that again. Higher price points, fewer workers. That microwave waffle is not a lazy cook. It is a strategy sold to the owner. It is also exactly the lever a debt-loaded owner pulls first. The third piece is the scissors, and this is what you feel in your wallet. Quality goes down while price goes up at the same time, by design. A study of 16 major chains found menu prices rose about 39% since 2020. Overall inflation over that stretch was about 22%. So restaurant prices climbed nearly double the cost of living. At IHOP, the top items rose 82%. At Denny's, the build-your-own Grand Slam went up 63%. And customers noticed. Restaurant traffic has fallen in 15 of the last 16 months, and roughly 9% of full-service restaurants are now at high risk of closing.
Hey everyone, real quick, I just want to jump in and say I think everyone should have a side hustle, a side business, making money and breaking free from the bonds of the man, the company you work for. If you want to learn how to start a side hustle or a business in an easy way, I put together an entire program. Links down below, take a look at it. It'll change the game. It's done it for thousands and thousands of people. Now, let's get back to the video.
The industry looks healthy on paper, more than $1.5 trillion in sales this year. But that top line is propped up almost entirely by higher prices, not more customers. The checks are just bigger. And to be honest, some of that price jump is real cost. Eggs and beef and wages and the 20 to 30% cut that delivery apps take. But layered on top of all of it is debt. And debt is the part the headlines skip, which brings us to how the machine actually kills a company. And the clearest example is Red Lobster. Here is the move, called a sale leaseback in plain English. A chain owns the buildings its restaurants sit in. The new owner sells those buildings to somebody else, pockets the cash, and then the chain has to rent back the very buildings it used to own on long leases where the rent climbs about 2% every year forever. When the private equity firm Golden Gate Capital bought Red Lobster for $2.1 billion, it sold the real estate under about 500 restaurants for $1.5 billion. But Red Lobster went from owning its buildings to owing rent. And court filings show that rent reached roughly $200 million a year. That is what sank it. There were also allegations in the bankruptcy filing that a later owner, a shrimp supplier, pushed an all-you-can-eat promotion that bled the company. But the fatal wound was written a decade earlier in a real estate deal. And if this pattern feels familiar, it should, because we have watched this exact movie before. In the 1980s, a financier named Robert Campo borrowed his way into America's department stores. He paid $3.6 billion for Allied stores, then $6.6 billion for Federated, borrowing roughly 97% of that price. By January of 1990, both chains were in bankruptcy, the largest retail bankruptcy in the country up to that point. A New York Times editorial marveled that it took a special kind of genius to bankrupt more than 250 profitable department stores. Fortune magazine called it the biggest, looniest deal ever. The stores were fine. The debt did the killing. Casual dining is running the same play, one waffle at a time. So what do you actually do with this? First, you can now see the next collapse coming, and the tell is simple. When a restaurant chain sells the real estate under its own stores, it is pre-writing its own obituary. Watch for that announcement. Second, spend where the machine cannot reach. The survivors are the chains that still cook their own food. The Waffle Houses and Texas Roadhouses and your local independents, the diner where the owner is actually in the building. And to be fair, the whole industry is not dying. Fast casual is growing, fine dining is holding up. It is specifically the debt-loaded middle, the legacy chains bought and stripped, that is collapsing. Your $38 is a vote. The extraction machine only eats what you keep feeding it. Watch three things from here. This week's inflation numbers again showed eating out rising faster than groceries. 3.4% against 2.7%, and that gap is the quiet tax on dining out. Watch for the next casual chain to quietly sell its buildings. And watch Denny's year-end store count against its promise of a return to growth. When the owner leaves the building, the kitchen leaves the food. You are not paying for breakfast. You are paying their rent. Economic Ninja is out.